What did Carnage do to Cletus Kasady's skin during the first transformation, and how did it affect his further look? During which transformation did Cletus Kasady's old arms literally fall off? What does Carnage do to his head? And what is the radical difference between Carnage and Venom's impact on the host's body? I'll answer these and other interesting questions about our old acquaintance Carnage in this video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Enjoy! With or without the monster, he's a maniac, a killer. But is there a psychopath with a warped concept of fairness who doesn't dream of absolute power? Power that would allow him to get away with ripping out his victims' spines, swapping their body parts, and smashing random passers-by into walls. After all, that's exactly what Cletus Kasady did in the form of Carnage when he first appeared in the '92 comic book as a full-fledged Spider-Man antagonist, especially when your new friend, who happens to be a symbiote, shares your desire for chaos and maximum carnage. Yes, Carnage and Kasady really did find each other. Carnage, who had bodied off and hid in Brock's body, was patiently waiting for a chance to move into the right host, which Cletus Kasady is. Or maybe all of that happened by pure accident. The movie didn't really deign to explain any of these plot twists, but it doesn't matter much for the topic of this video. Unlike the scenes where Kasady transforms into a new creature, Carnage, being still weak and lacking power once in Kasady's body after Brock bit him, travels through the host's gastrointestinal tract, quickly seeping into a habitat that was familiar to him, the bloodstream. Other symbiotes use the bloodstream as one of the ways to settle in the host's bodies, while the red one prefers the bloodstream. The reason for such a relatively localized presence in Kasady's body is also because Carnage here is still quite weak and small compared to the size of symbiotes. And this is where the most interesting feature of Kasady's first transformation lies, which will leave its mark on Carnage's future appearance. It's not just the sadistic maniac's sick nature that plays a role here. In these scenes, the symbiote not only establishes a full-fledged bond with its host, but also grows and gains strength, feeding on Kasady's flesh to do that. In the first movie, the symbiotes, which had already matured, ate the host's organs while being in their bodies. That's what Drake's research scientists were talking about. And Carnage in these scenes eats Cletus Kasady's skin, spreading through it like a cancerous tumor. Judging by a combination of factors which I'll discuss further on, it devours the skin, getting bigger and stronger in the places where these meals happen. This transformation scene is completely different from all the others, because here we see the maturation of the symbiote, among other things. In the video about Venom, we looked closer at the transformation of Eddie Brock's body, which the symbiote puts him through. During metamorphosis, Venom changes the proportions of Brock's body and also synchronizes his gastrointestinal tract, but the mechanics of their symbiosis can be vaguely compared to organic exosuit that covers Brock's body. Carnage's first transformation, as I said, is not like the others. What's more, it doesn't even resemble what Carnage will look like in just a minute. But here you can already see from the transformation of the right hand, which has a decent amount of skin already eaten away, that Kasady's metamorphosis comes from within on a cellular level, changing all the tissues. His right arm in this scene is a limb devoid of skin with a hypertrophied skeletal and muscular structure. After that, the red one will transform the host's body in a very different way, but Kasady's skinless flesh transformed into Carnage will forever remain the attribute of the monster's appearance. In its next transformations, Carnage will literally shed Kasady's skin, specifically the skin, not the remnants of clothing. The difference between Kasady's pants and his skin will be clearly visible in these shots. Even Carnage's tentacles, which it uses so often and to such a great effect, are a seemingly bare muscular structure with organic tissue in between, giving an even stronger impression of dissected flesh. And by the way, the white thread-like tissue that covers Carnage's body is the remnants of Kasady's old skin. We'll discuss it in more details later. Once out of the cell, Carnage demonstrates the nature of his abilities, which makes him something of a T-1000 among symbiotes. Later he'll turn out to be a TX as well. The guards circle the red one from behind and from the front and open fire at him. In this case, sneaky Carnage makes a through hole in his abdominal and to some extent thoracic area, and for some reason does the same thing on the sides, letting the guards shoot each other. When the red one used a similar trick against Venom's kick, in one of the angles it seemed that there was something like Kasady's organs inside. But the following scenes along with the escape scene do suggest that there's nothing resembling human anatomy inside Carnage. Carnage and its host make a single organic symbiotic structure. In the following transformations, we see Carnage digesting Kasady's organism on a cellular level, using it as a gene biomass, as a modifier on which he builds his future anthropomorphic monster form. In the Venom video, I made a quick comparison between Kasady's transformation and what the alien does to people's bodies in The Thing, when it absorbs and replaces human cells with its own, transforming them in various ways. And Carnage in its movie adaptation does something akin to that. What's interesting, considering this all, Kasady manages to partially separate himself from Carnage, especially in those moments when the latter doesn't want it. In the scene with the Warden and other scenes like this, half of Kasady's head is still the single organic mass with the symbiote. For sure, it's worth paying attention to the question, where does this power come from? The above-mentioned source, the comic book, contains the answer to this question that fits quite seamlessly into the context of the movie. Facing Carnage for the first time, Spider-Man was amazed by his strength and ability to use the suit as an impressive arsenal of weapons. Spidey was especially surprised by his skill of creating throwing weapons that detached from Carnage's body and disintegrated after a few seconds. Peter explained this by its molecular instability. Later, Eddie Brock will confidently assume that the secret of Carnage's power is that, unlike its fellows, it was born on Earth. More than that, it was also born inside a human body, in the movie that is, which makes it more adaptive and advanced in the way it uses its resources. The comic also described tricks with altering the host on a genetic level, but nowhere near the extent that was shown in the film. This fact, for example, explains the immunity to high-frequency sounds. Venom classifies Carnage as a separate red subspecies with a higher threat level. So Carnage is red here most likely not because it's literally skinless, but perhaps because its subspecies is born in the host's bodies, making their bond more effective and advanced. It's hard to say in this case whether the color of the host's blood affects it. It may as well be purple. Originally, Carnage's color is explained by its very name, and for Kasady, the topic of blood is clearly elevated to absolute. You know, with his metaphorical statements, writing on the walls, self-torture, writing his history in bloody colors, his knowledge of blood's organoleptic properties after all, and so on. Now, when I said that Kasady's first transformation was different from all the other ones, I was of course lying, as they all differ from each other. But not by the biological mechanism, which is based on cellular rearrangement, rather by the chaotic nature of the metamorphoses, which makes sense since we're dealing with a literal embodiment of chaos, you know. And speaking about Kasady's head, which symbiote literally turns into biological minced meat. In the scenes in the car, Carnage decided to hypertrophy Kasady's lower jaw first, placing sharp teeth chaotically on it. Another time, he decided to let these teeth come out of his right eye and temple. Then, in a reverse transformation of the same reincarnation, we saw how Kasady's former face was molded from symbiotic biomass. But it's not the metamorphosis of Kasady's head where the most interesting details lie. It's the metamorphosis of his arms. One of his transformations takes place in the scene with Detective Mulligan, and here Carnage's new arms come out of Kasady's palms, as can be seen in both his left and right arms, and Kasady's old left hand remains here. We can see it undergoing some kind of accelerated biological necrosis and finally simply disintegrating. The same thing happens to the other hand. Here's Kasady's old right hand. Cletus's old limbs in this episode disintegrate into the same thread-like white fibers that cover Carnage's body, reminding that human flesh is weak. This transformation of hands is different from anything we've seen. In the temple, Kasady's hand didn't die off and fall off that fast. During the transformation, it remained somewhere around where Carnage's future rest would be. Perhaps that trick with the hands had something to do with Kasady's banter. When Mulligan ordered him to raise his hands, he grinned and mumbled, "What hands?" And in the same scenes, we also see Kasady's old skin that was shed by Carnage. Can you imagine the rejuvenation Kasady has undergone as a duo with Carnage? Carnage doesn't just rebuild the body during the reverse transformations, he recreates many of his parts from scratch. Apparently because the chaotic mechanics of Carnage's transformations kinda feel like it. But anyway, the story of Venom 2 isn't a story of bloody carnage, it's a story teaching us to stay away from guys who know the taste of blood. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Also leave a comment down below and share this video with your friends. Bye!